Hey everyone, it's Steph. Today I'm going to be wrapping up the books that I read in May. First, I'm going to tell you how many books I read this month. Overall, I read 22 books. 10 of them were audiobooks, 10 of them were ebooks, and 2 of them were physical copies of books. So I had a nice little variety there. I get almost all my books from the library, so I tend to use a lot of library apps because the library is closed right now. The physical books, I've only got what I've got at home from before quarantine, and I just made a video about that I'm going to be sharing real soon. I'm excited for you guys to see that. Today we're going to dive into the books that I read in the month of May. Sometimes I try to narrow it down to a small group, 5 or so-ish books. You know what, I'm just throwing that idea out the window today. I'm just gonna talk to you about the books I like and chat about the ones that were good, things that just kind of, not terrible, but not my favorite thing ever. So check it out. Don't read the comments. Eric Smith created this story about Divya, who's also known as D1V on her video game social media presence, and she is an active video gamer who gets all sorts of sponsorships and ads and revenue and free items that comes from her large social media presence, following on her video games and the streams that she does, what it's like for her and her mom to kind of rely on this extra income as she's preparing for college, and she is also trying to navigate this social world of people who think they can say whatever they want online, partially because of her ethnicity and her gender, and she's just kind of being targeted. She's really just videotaping herself and doing virtual reality video games and trying to make it a fun, enjoyable experience for her and her followers. So it's not like she's actively doing anything wrong. We just have guys who are being total grumps. Then we have Aaron, who is a gamer, kind of a bit of does his own thing, what he feels like, and they end up meeting together in this space game and creating this virtual relationship. They start to learn more about each other's personalities, and then they start to have a connection, and then they're trying to figure out what to do with this connection while she's getting threats and having dangerous situations thrust upon her in real life, in addition to what's happening in the virtual world. And then he's trying to speak up for this injustice. He's also trying to help design the story for an indie video game and seeing his friend who creates the artwork and this kind of the planning process of what kind of planning goes into preparing a video game, even their kind of rudimentary trying to begin to build something that's they've never done before versus what you expect a company who's hired tens of, hundreds of animators and story creators and professionals who do this kind of work for a living. It was a really interesting look into the gamer world, as well as it was just a totally different, I felt like I stepped into a different world with this book. So I enjoyed the cutesy YA romance. I enjoyed the different perspective with the storytelling, being in a virtual world as well as in real life, and seeing how the two are juxtaposed, as well as when they kind of end up seeing what to do with their relationship moving forward, if we're willing to trust one another enough to be vulnerable in person and see what can come from that potential relationship. So I thought that was interesting. Felt like I didn't totally love it, but I liked the diversity component. I liked the video game component. It was unique. At times I felt it lagged just a teensy bit, especially in the beginning. It took me a little while to get into it. But the ending was cute, the ending was worth it, and it was creative, so I give them props for that. So overall, I enjoyed it. Next book I'm going to talk about is The Wishing Spell. This is by Chris Colfer. You may know him previously from his time on Glee. I thought it was super interesting in the dedication. He was saying something like a thanks to his grandma for telling him to wait until he was out of elementary school to write his first book, which I thought was super cute. A great story about twin siblings, Alex and Connor. They end up falling into the world of a fairy tale book, and they're very familiar with fairy tale books. Their parents owned a bookstore, so they're very much kind of owned a bookstore or worked at a bookstore, something like that. And then they just start navigating this fairy tale world and seeing kind of what was factual to the fairy tale books that they'd grown up with and which things were not accurate to this fictitious fairy tale world. And you see so many fairy tale characters. I give the author tons of credit for creating this very creative, imaginative world. It is very descriptive. Sometimes I felt like the descriptions almost got bogged down a teensy bit. I felt like a lot of information, but the story was good. I had to take a break from this audiobook for a day or two because I just felt like I was losing my focus with the plot, and it just felt like it was a little bit I'm not gonna say all over the place because there was just a lot. It was dense with details. But the way that the story ended up revealing little Easter eggs from different fairy tales that we're familiar with and kind of retelling it in this really creative and imaginative way, I really enjoyed the ending. So if you're a fairy tale lover, if you like middle grade stories, if you like stories that are kind of creative and take something we know and kind of like spin it in a totally new and unique way, then this might be a book for you to check out. Next we have another middle grades book, Serafina and the Black Cloak. She and her dad live in the basement at Biltmore Mansion. And if you're not familiar with Biltmore, it's a very prominent mansion for a prominent family in North Carolina in the early 1900s. I've heard of the mansions. It automatically made me feel like something was familiar to me in the story, which I thought was neat, to create a fictitious story in a real place. I think it's a really neat idea. Tamara Alexander also does the same thing with her Mansion series, which I love, but I'll gush about them another day. Serafina is kind of a loner. She doesn't really have anyone else her own age to interact with. Serafina only has like 4 fingers on each hand, and she's very flexible, and she kind of has some non-human characteristics. Like she can see in the dark very well. She ends up witnessing a little girl being taken away by a man with a black cloak, and she goes to save her and to help her, and then it starts her on this journey of figuring out who is this man in the black cloak, where is the little girl, how can we save her, how can we reduce this threat that is there and is still continuing to abscond with children. It ends up kind of being a mix of like this middle grades version of like a historical fiction kind of story mixed with an adventure, mixed with a little bit of fantasy, and there's the woods and things happen in the woods, so like mystical elements. So I thought it was really neat. I did feel like this story took like a long time to get the plot going, but once we got the plot going, I was digging it. I was like, okay, this is cool. We have the nephew of the master of the house, Braden. He was a really neat character, and we see Braden and Serafina start to work together to kind of figure out the mystery element of the story. They're both still young, so they don't know everything that the adults know in terms of the history. There's this kind of mystery of like all these graves nearby the woods, but there are no bodies buried in them supposedly. So there are all these kind of like mystery kind of elements. It doesn't leave you with an idea of how the series is going to continue. But there's definitely room in this story to expand on other ideas that have been presented throughout the book and other themes that have been presented in this book. So I'm interested to see if I continue with this series, where it goes. Moving on. This is The Kingdom of Bach by Marie Lu, I think is how we say her name. I talked about this book earlier as I wanted to read this book, and Marie Lu apparently has always loved the story of Mozart and his sister. And a lot of people aren't familiar with the story of his sister. I talked on and on about this in an earlier video, so I'm not going to talk as much about the history, but Mozart is very well known for his prolific compositions during his lifetime. He wrote over 600 pieces, so he wrote an astounding amount of music. He was composing by the age of 5 and 6, so it was pretty insane. But his sister, also a composer, was also a very talented musician. They both toured together as child prodigies around Europe, so they were really astounding children, and we get to see a glimpse into what it's like for her as the oldest child, understanding that he's a few years younger than her. There's a bit of a gap. She has this maturity as a young teenager versus him who's kind of coming out of childhood. So we see him kind of growing up and just kind of joyfully going through the world. Meanwhile, we see her with a more mature perspective, saying, oh my gosh, I can do what he's doing, but because he's younger and cuter and a boy, he's getting more attention. So we kind of see how those dynamics of gender and social expectations of the two genders, how that's impacting where they're going in life, and how that affects their father's expectations of their lives and their marital prospects. The fantasy world is the Kingdom of Bach, which I give Marie Lu tons of credit for, because she created this whole world that is original in and of itself in her imagination of it. But the original concept of the Kingdom of Bach is not new. It's something that both the Mozart children created. So it's something that they created on their own. We can read about through their letters because they corresponded, and many of those letters still exist today. Super interesting to see how Marie Lu took this world that these two children made up for fun to pass the time on their long carriage rides around Europe, and she actually gave this world a vision and gave this world physical components and creatures and mystical elements and magical powers, and what does that mean for the real life, and how does she learn about herself in the fantasy world, and how does that affect her real life. It is very creatively woven in between what's real and what is not. I thought that was very creative storytelling on the part of Marie Lu, and a very interesting way to create a fantasy story out of something that's true. If you're interested in the story of Mozart and his sister, Nannerl is a great perspective to take for the storytelling. How her and her brother Wolfgang navigated their life, and also this Kingdom of Bach and how that impacted their lives in this book was really interesting, and a very unique storytelling element that I definitely recommend if you're even remotely interested. Check it out. Next we have Miss Adeline's Match, and this is a story by a new author to me. Just learned about her recently during quarantine. I started following her on Instagram, so definitely check her out. She posts books that are on sale all the time on Amazon by her and other authors, constantly like telling about good deals, like freebies or 99-cent deals, whatever. Anyways, so Miss Adeline's Match is about Adeline. She's helping her dearest friend, whose name is Charity. Charity is very wealthy, and her father has hired Adeline to be a companion. Charity and her family live on this wealthy estate. Adeline's family lives within the property on the estate, and her father has now started to basically have dementia, Alzheimer's symptoms. He's no longer able to work. So she is working so that she can earn income to help her father. Charity is invited to a house party, and when they attend the house party, they end up creating new relations, and one of those relations is Sir Evan. And Sir Evan lives next door, so they have all kinds of either interactions at the house during the house party. They also have interactions or daily walks around the estate. So it's interesting to see kind of how those components kind of meet together. I thought that this is a character who has very Darcy-like elements. It's very much a first impression, similar to Darcy. And we slowly start to see his vulnerable side as we go throughout the book, and seeing that there is a much different side to him that she has not seen on first or second meetings. So she's slowly starting to kind of see what's behind kind of stoic, serious man, and meet another side of him. I really like these characters. I was invested in the story, and I was interested to see how it ended, and it was like super sweet Regency romance that just made my heart happy. I was digging it. If you are interested in Regency romance, just check it out. It's so good. I enjoyed it very much. The last book I'm going to talk about is a book that is totally different from any of the others I've mentioned today. I just finished it and I wanted to chat about it. It is a devotional book called Sacred Rest by Cheryl Wonderleak. It's not even listed on Goodreads with her name, and I'm not sure why. It's just listed as anonymous. But this was excellent. Finding the Sabbath in the everyday sacred rest. It's all about, in the busyness of our lives, finding ways to kind of have a few moments to kind of rest and quiet ourselves and be with God. And I thought it was awesome. It's super simple. But we have a little Bible passage, we have a short reflection, and a little prayer that's a couple sentences. It's short and sweet, and it's really funny because I started this a while ago and then kind of just got busy and stopped looking at it every day. And I just picked it up right before quarantine, and it has brought me so much peace to my morning routine. It gives me perspective for my day, and I really love that it is just a very simple way to just have a few moments with God at the beginning of your day when everything is still quiet, no noises happening, no TV or audiobooks or music or anything. It just gives perspective for the day, and it just makes you feel like you're grounded and anchored in what's most important kind of thing. And so many of them later on that I've been reading during quarantine have been about like in times of uncertainty, in times of great sadness, in times when we need hope. And I'm just like, this is literally perfect for where we are right now. So highly recommend. If you are interested, definitely check it out. I'd love to chat about books with you in the comments below, so definitely leave me some comments about what books you've read or want to read, any thoughts about the books I mentioned in this video or other books that you've read, and I look forward to chatting with you guys soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you later. Have a great day.